Sucker punch somebody on a sidewalk, carjacking old lady at a red light.
Hey Leslie, it's all right. I think everybody knows Jason Aldean in Small Town. I think we got that. Even the dog knows that one. In the election of 2020, I won my primary in March of 2020, and I did that on a 2-to-1 victory over the incumbent. And I felt pretty good about that, and I worked very hard at that. And I doubled down on all my efforts for the fall, because we have to do it again. No one got 50%. And that night, when the votes came in, my opponent was within 0.4% close to me, and I knew something was wrong. I knew I had beat him on a 2-to-1 or a large margin, not 0.4%. Now, I went on to win that race, but in my gut, I knew there was a problem. I didn't know what it was. I just knew something wasn't right here in Shasta County with that race. I still won, but I had concerns. And then I was elected starting in 2021 and started to serve, but then I started to do the research and started to look into elections and some of the problems that we have. And a good place to start is with the California Secretary of State and take a look at what they have found from 2004 all the way to today. Hacking, hacking, and more hacking. They've hired people to hack. Every time they did, they were successful. A hackathon in 2017, they couldn't get through breakfast, and they hacked all top 3 machines in the country, which is Dominion, ES&S, and HART. Every time they attempted to do it, they did it. Every time. And it's a vote-flipping scheme. And that's what Clint Curtis is here to talk about tonight, because he wrote the program to do it. He was the guy that testified in front of Congress, and he was able to do it, and they're still using it today. The Secretary of State here in California in 2018 requested $443 million to upgrade cybersecurities here in California. That was granted. That was in 2018, and they said cyber attacks are the new norms. The attacks from Russia alone are threatening our democracy. But then in 2020, we have the safest elections ever, and it's a big lie. All of a sudden, it changed very quickly. Now, when they said that, I knew there was a problem, right? We have demonstrated from California Secretary of State's own website all the problems, and they seem to have tried to make some changes along the way to stop the attacks. They did not. The attackers got more sophisticated and more sophisticated. And now here we are facing another election coming in 2024, and are we prepared? Is it going to be fair? Probably not. Who here thinks we have fair elections in the United States? Nobody. Who here thinks we have troubles in our elections in Shasta County? Raise your hand. All right, there we go. All right, so it is my pleasure. Our guest speaker tonight, I'm not going to talk too long. He's from Florida. He is a liberal Democrat. Let's put our hands together for Clint Curtis.
Hi, everybody. Do I need both of these, or can you hear me with this one? Then I don't need this. Yep. He gave it to me. I want to be polite. I took it, right? That's the way it is. Okay. Good to be here. Good to see you. How many Democrats we got? 1, 2, of course my wife, and we actually have Dale Axelrod. He is on a committee with the Sonoma Democrats. So we're getting there. We're getting back online. Okay? You guys were slow. Both me and Dale have been working on this since, what, 2000 when I wrote that thing? So we've been trying to fix this for a long, long time. And the Republicans are going, looks good to me. But then you figured it out, right? It's like, well, they won't cheat every race. They'll just cheat a few here, a few there, because the program I wrote lets you select the race along with the cheat. Now, I had hard-coded the cheat, but, you know, that didn't bother them the first 4 years. They just kept the same numbers all the time. Very strange. Anyway, back in 2000, I worked for a company in Oviedo, Florida, and it was our head lobbyist, the Speaker of the Florida House, our corporate attorney, and Jeb Bush's running mate the first time he ran was a fellow named Tom Feeney. And he came to the company and said, I want a prototype for voting machines. No voting machines were out there. To my best knowledge, none were planned. This was way back in 2000, before the hanging Chad, right? So before the hanging Chad, they're asking for a replacement for that system. No problem. Easy to do. Any programmers in the room? Couple? You know how easy it is to do, right? If you want to write a good system, you're going to take the number the person has and add 1 to it. And that's it. Nothing else. If you have a million lines of code, something funny's going on, because you should be taking a number and 1 to it, and nothing else. So that's kind of a giveaway. But anyway, he requested that, no problem. The odd thing, he also requested at the time that code be inserted into that which would allow someone to go up and select who the winner was going to be. Flip any race, anytime. That was all the instructions. The rest I get to play with, right? So I'm assuming that they've heard that people were going to put these machines out there, and they wanted to prove that you couldn't use computers to count votes, which you can't. Don't use computers to count votes. Bad idea. So I put it out there, went ahead, put the paper with it, says this is why you can't use them. Because you can't see the vote. You can't see it counted. It moves way too fast. I can change 100,000 votes in a split second. And not all at once. I can change a vote in this precinct, 2 votes in this precinct, and 5 votes in that precinct. So I can make it almost impossible to ever look at it, to ever check it. Now, if you have the source code, you might be able to do it, unless you do it in a function and then you just have it eat it itself. So if I had a program sitting aside that performed a certain function, I just call that, make it happen, and make it eat itself. And in the program I was writing, all you had to do was, let's say the program's called Bob. I would say, kill Bob, and it's gone. It is gone. That's the whole code for it, and it's gone. And you'll never find it. Especially if I take another module and rename it Bob. Because now I've overwritten what the table's going to say. And this is assuming you get to do a forensic on it, which you don't. Which you don't. When I explain this all in my paper, so there you go, don't use them. Head of the company says, well, this isn't really for stopping vote fraud. This is for using in West Palm Beach, specifically. You know? And I say, well, these people must be crazy. You know, they were Republicans. They want to target West Palm Beach, which is a heavily Democratic area. Right? You want to just move a few votes here or there. Not a bunch, not all the time, just a few precincts, 1, 2, 3 votes. You do that, you dilute it down enough, you win. You get 51-49. You start sneaking things together. So that's what they want to do, but I figure, well, the Democrats are too smart to let them do that, right? You know, are Democrats stupid? Are they going to let Republicans who have companies that actually favor them build machines and then put them out there to all these counties to buy and use? Democrats aren't going to do that. They're way too smart. I was completely wrong. They were dumb as a rock and said, oh, whatever, you know. Of course, we'll get to that. But essentially, that was the whole procedure. So we did it, no problem, piece of cake. And that's kind of the way it worked. So I decided I must tell people. Because if they know what's going on, that will fix the problem. So in 2004, I actually testified before the United States Congress to tell them exactly what went on.
Mr. Curtis, would you please state your full name for the record?
My name is Clinton Eugene Curtis,
And where do you reside?
Tallahassee, Florida.
And what is your profession?
I'm a computer programmer.
Would you please speak into the microphone so the audience can hear your testimony?
I'm a computer programmer.
Mr. Curtis, are there programs that can be used to secretly fix elections?
Yes,
How do you know that to be the case?
because in October of 2000, I wrote a prototype for President Congressman Tom Feeney at the company I work for in Oviedo, Florida, that did just that.
And when you say did just that, it would rig an election?
It would flip the vote 51-49 to whoever you wanted it to go to and whichever race you wanted to win.
And would that program that you designed be something that elections officials that might be on county boards of elections could detect?
They'd never see it.
Mr. Would you answer that question once again?
They would never see it.
So how would such a program, a secret program that fixes the election, how could it be detected?
You would have to view it either in the source code, or you'd have to have a receipt and then count the hard paper against the actual vote total. Other than that, you won't see it.
All right, Mr. Curtis, if you had been asked, you or others with your professional expertise had been asked to design a protected program that would protect the Ohio elections from against such software to fix the election, could you have done so?
If we've been asked to make a program that can fix the election, sure, anybody can do it.
No, could you have designed a program or a procedure or a protocol that would have protected Ohio against this kind of rigging?
No, you have to look at the source code. You have to get probably programmers from both or all parties to look at the source code and determine if there's anything in there that shouldn't be there. I mean, it's a simple program. You're adding 1 to a person's total. It's 100 lines of code tops.
All right. Are you aware of whether there was any protective action in Ohio against this kind of vote rigging through software?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know.
You were not asked to assist in the development of any protective system, is that correct?
No, I was not.
In Europe, have you reviewed at all the election results in Ohio?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Given the availability of such vote rigging software and the testimony that has been given under oath of substantial statistical anomalies and gross differences between exit polling data and the actual tabulated results, do you have an opinion whether or not the Ohio election, presidential election, was hacked?
Yes, I would say it was. I mean, if you have exit polling data that is significantly off from
On
the
that
vote,
committee is
then-
Maxine Waters, Adam Schiff, all these people, right? They were all on board, every one of them. You know, what happened? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. They complained about it, they pushed forward a few things, the Republicans said, nah, good enough. Good enough, right? So, now we fast forward through the rest of the cycles. You know, in 2004, was probably the first time that I really noticed they were using it, because in the presidential election, 2004, all the swing states suddenly came out 51-49, my exact same code. They had not come out 51-49 before that. In fact, they didn't come out 52-48 or 56-44. They came out 51-49. Every swing state came out 51-49. The weird thing is, some of them should have come out in more in the favor of Bush. It looks like they just cheated them all where they had to or not, which is really stupid, right? So that's essentially what happened. I've been telling people about it ever since, and essentially nothing has happened. In 2020, you guys finally say, hey, something is absolutely wrong here. You know, you have all this evidence, right? How many people have seen the evidence for the election in 2020? Right? How many thinks it was okay, good election? Yeah. Nobody? Yeah. That's because it wasn't. How about 2016? Do you see all the evidence for 2016? No, because you didn't care. Your guy won, right? Who cares? I'm not looking at that. It was the same thing. It was precincts where everything was screwy, where there's more votes than voters, where nothing balances, and everybody just said, oh, that's okay. We'll just let it go. And that's basically where we've been. So I like to play games so everybody knows kind of where we are. So I'm thinking of a number, 1 or 2. What's my number? 1? Wrong. She owes me $50. That's our election system. You go in there, you make your vote, and then they tell you who wins, and nothing, you get no information as to why that occurs. And if you try and check it, well, it used to be they just like called you names and that sort of thing. Now they indict you. So now it's actually worse. Yeah, now we're going to the side. You aren't even allowed to challenge elections. You're only allowed to say, well, that's not right, because I think most of you, even though we were election challengers at one point, you are deniers.
Yeah.
Isn't that a more forceful word?
Oh, yeah.
Don't you feel bad?
Oh, yeah.
And that's essentially what we have. So that's where that's gone. Let's play it again. Because you don't want to pay $50, right?
No.
Okay, double or nothing. I'm going to write it down. I wrote it down. What's the number? Wrong. And I can't show you what I wrote it down. It's proprietary. I would really like to. I would really like to show it to you. So with paper ballots, that's what you have. You go in there, you mark your bubbles. Although here, do you mark the bubbles or do you actually have the stupid little barcodes? Which is worse?
Straight line.
You have what?
Straight line.
You have the bubbles? Okay. At least you get bubbles. But then they won't show them to you. They won't show you the bubbles. They won't let you recount them. And if you try and recount, it's going to cost you $1 million, while they're calling you names. So it's not hard to see why a lot of people went back. Okay, so now you're down to $100. Let me show you where the Democrats went. I know. Well, you'll be okay. Don't worry. I'll take care of you. So I'll show you where the Democrats went, because we had 75% of the Democrats on board to fix this problem. We had, I don't know if you've ever seen the stuff Mike Lindell puts out, but you have Kamala Harris talking about it, you have Hillary Clinton talking about it, you have Obama talking about it. Everybody's on board. Adam Schiff, Maxine Waters, all those people. Everybody's on board. We're ready to go, right? Okay? Something happened. What happened? Pick a number between 1 or 2. 2. You are right.
Oh my gosh.
She believes me now. Because she has to believe me or she owes me $100. And that's where the Democrats went. If we say the elections still stink, then our guy didn't get elected. Right? Or at least we don't know. In 2020, did Biden get elected? No. But you don't know.
Oh, we do.
In 2016, did Trump get elected? You don't know. It was just as bad. My law office actually filed the election challenge on the Trump election for Florida. Okay? We had 500 pages of issues and errors in that election just in Florida. Not across the nation, just in Florida. Okay? Of course, nothing ever happens because they have to do a sit on it. In most cases, if you're a lawyer, most cases you file for discovery, right? They have to give you something a certain amount of days. If they don't, you file to compel them. Then they have to give you something in 30 days. If they don't, you can eventually force them to do it or they start getting fined. In election law, you have a solid wall that is called, when they confirm the votes, when they do the canvass and they sign it off, you're done. So like when Trump was trying to challenge up in Washington, D.C. on January 6th and saying, do not do that, that's why he was making a big deal about it, because once that's done, it's done. And you have a very small wall. Same way we were fighting it in 2016. We had no time. They basically refused to give us any documents. Surprise. And by the time that we could get the compel motion, time's up. Election is certified and it's done. And that's the way it works. So if you are ever challenging election, if you're an election lawyer, the first thing he should tell you is that your chance of winning is like nothing. You have no chance to win, and even if you win, you probably won't win anything. It's like, oh, well, yes, they did make a mistake and they violated law. What's the penalty for that? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Case in point, Secretary of State in Florida. There was an election challenge. The person actually was going to get to see the ballots. This was Tim Canova against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I don't know who she is. Do you? There's a lot of moaning in here. She made the challenge. He got a judge to say, you have to provide the ballots. That very night, she shredded every one of them. If you did that in a court case, what would happen? You'd go to jail, or you'd at least cost you a lot of money. In this case, what happens? Nothing. She said, oops, I grabbed the wrong stack of ballots. I meant to grab these other ballots that I'm not really supposed to be shredding either because it's still too early, but I meant to grab those, which are not the protected ones. Goes away. So it just doesn't matter. The point, though, that we have to get to is a point of trust. If you challenge the election based on all the information you have, it won't make any difference. You will never win. It will be ignored, or even if it's not ignored, it will be ruled that you don't have standing or that you've ran out of time. And that's the way it is. That's the way the election is set up. And they push you to go to machines. Let's talk about 2000 after I wrote that thing. Anybody know what else happened in 2000? The hanging Chad. Okay? That was not an accident, guys. If you look back, there's a Dan Rather report on it. Prior to that election, now Florida had never had a hanging Chad problem before. But in that election, suddenly we had one. So now we have a solution waiting in the wings to fix an election, and we have a hanging Chad problem. And the hanging Chad problem was suddenly they decided to change the paper to a thinner paper, and they changed the way it was cut to have a little bit of a nub on it. And there you have a hanging Chad. And what do you do with that? Well, we'll just throw this away and go to machines. And there you go. So there's a lot going on with the machines. Diebold, remember Diebold? Diebold sold their stuff to Dominion and other such people. Anyway, Diebold was around. You know, the head of the company said, I guarantee a victory for Mr. Bush because it's not who votes, it's who counts the votes. This is an election company owner saying this. Stupid thing to say. I think he was drunk. I'm not real sure. But, you know, that's what he said. So, essentially, it's been a problem forever, and it continues to be a problem. But you don't want to fight it with evidence because evidence doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. We have a case where we saw in Montana, the supervisor elections got caught on camera because there was a camera there that they had blocked with a piece of paper. She couldn't see anymore. Well, they run their office as well as they block cameras because it slid down a little, there's a little slit across the top. So we see her during the election standing there taking mail-in ballots and shredding them on camera during election day. But you know what happened to her? Nothing. Nothing. Because evidence doesn't matter. Trust matters. How many Democrats do you think believe in the elections? No. AP says that, and AP is not necessarily friendly to your cause, if you know what I mean. So the AP says that 60% of the Democrats don't believe in the elections. I think it's much higher. It used to be like 90%. How many Republicans don't believe in the elections?
100%.
Only 85. You still have a few out there. But that is not the part that believes in it the least. The part that believes in it the least are independents, of which almost none of them believe the elections are valid. So in this country, we have people voting in a system that nobody believes in. Is Biden your president? No. Trump wasn't ours.
Yes, he is.
Because we didn't know. We didn't think it was right, and we would never know. If we had an election where we could actually find out who won, we would accept that, wouldn't we? If you actually saw Biden win and you could count the votes and go, crap, we'll get him next time, you would go, okay, that's my president, like we used to do. Back before machines, when we believed. And the same way with Trump, because we would give legitimacy to the whole idea of it. Let me show you something interesting though. This is something that, you know, if anybody says, oh, you don't have any real evidence, let me show you this one. This is kind of nice. This is Texas. At 8:23 p.m., do you notice anything weird about that?
You're blocking part of it.
So you don't. Do you know anything weird about that? The Democrat and the Independent has exactly the same number of votes. Exactly. That's pretty rare, right? Could happen.
Why do you have .44 votes?
What's that?
Why do you have .44 votes?
Where's .44 votes?
46.440.
Oh, that's 46,440.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if it had that, that would be even weirder. Could happen.
It did not last long.
Here's 8:23 p.m., the exact same night, the exact same time in a different county. Two, could happen, couldn't happen. Let's look at Crane County. 8:23 p.m. Same night, different county, exactly the same number of votes. Exactly. Not a close percentage, exactly. Big counties, little counties. Loving. Loving has like 6 people in the whole county. So anyone who says, I'm in a small county, they won't cheat me, right? Small county. Loving actually has 64 people in the entire county. So if you're looking to get away, go to Loving County, Texas. Exact same number of votes, exact same time, and exact same day. Reagan County. Anyone want to guess how this is going to come out? Same time, same day, same race, exactly the same number of votes. Sutton County. Now these are all Republican counties. But what this tells you is something more telling than just that. Now, in Texas, Gonzalez here did not need to cheat to win this race. There is no way in the world the Democrat could have won that race at all. And yet you see this type of behavior. Isn't that strange? So it's like, we'll just cheat it for fun. You want to make sure. Does that mean Gonzalez cheated?
No.
It does not. A lot of people go, oh, the Democrats are cheating me. No, they're probably not. And that guy running for city council has probably not got his finger on the button. Not saying he couldn't have, because last guy in wins. So if he hires a hacker, last guy in wins. That's just the way it works. Uvalde County. I bet you could guess what this one is, right? 8:23 p.m. Same thing. Exactly the same number of votes. And this is a Democratic county. So a Democratic county, you wouldn't expect to see that, right? That'd be crazy. Look at there, that Independent did pretty good there too. Exactly the same number of votes. But he might have been winning that one, but they all went to the other place. Because you don't just flop them needlessly, you just move them around. And you don't have to move around a lot. Any geeks in here? Tell me what that tells you. Come on, geeks. Okay. You a geek? No, it's just change your glasses. I thought I'd volunteer. What that is that is a computer adjustment. That means that the reporting caught that computer exactly at the time when it was adjusting its totals down to do its math and then put them back up. Because on some of the ones that came after, the Independent didn't even have that number of votes. But that can only occur with the computer. You would never find that in nature where 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 counties at exactly the same moment will have exactly the same number for the Democrat and Independent. Impossible. Not rare, not unlikely, absolutely, completely impossible. Didn't happen. And that happens all the time. So what's their explanation for that? They don't need one. And most times they don't give you one. They talk about audits. Audits never catch anything. Audits are worth nothing. The only limited risking is limit them getting caught, because you're catching such a small amount, and the computer knows where you can cheat and where you can't anyway. So it knows what your audit's going to look like. Now that's assuming it doesn't have any human intervention. 2004, when we were first fighting this thing, there was a big audit in Cuyahoga County, Ohio. Remember them? Cuyahoga? Anyway, it was a big battleground, Ohio. Idaho is not much of a battleground anymore, but it was at the time. Cuyahoga County had an audit. Their audit came out absolutely perfect. Perfect to the vote. Okay, everybody forgot about them. Except then the people that worked in the office started bragging how good their audit came out because they stayed up all night and fixed it. So a bunch of them went to jail. Had they said nothing, their audit would be perfect. But generally a computer should be able to figure out where you're going to audit and make it close enough. Does that mean that your machine is accurate? It is not. The audit did not catch the race in Georgia. Person got 0 votes in Georgia. Said, wait now, I voted for myself. She also thought her husband voted for her. I don't know if that's true. That's an assumption. But she voted for herself. So she went and she demanded a hand count. The hand count, she had won. What's the explanation? It was just a simple programming error, one-off, it'll never happen again. That's not the way computers work. It's not the way computers work at all. If they're working correctly, it takes that total and it adds 1, and it does nothing else. And if it doesn't work correctly, then something's going on. Does that mean the machines are cheating you? Not necessarily. When I wrote it, the code was at the software layer. But there are a lot of different layers. There's a software layer. There is the firmware layer. So like anyone who puts in a thumb drive, who puts in a mouse, any sort of hardware can have any code you want in it. Code is not restricted to, what it actually is. You can put it anywhere. So if you want code to make it cheat, you can make it cheat anywhere. There's also the chipset layer, and people don't realize that. China builds the chips that goes in our machines. When I did my programming days, right? I worked for NASA, I worked for DOT, I worked for all the big Ds, right? ExxonMobil, all the big companies. I was like superstar programmer. I could do any sort of prototyping. You tell me what you want, I'll build it in 10 seconds. So do that together, but what we have there is whenever I wrote a program, or anybody I've ever known who wrote programs, there is always a backdoor. There has to be a backdoor. The reason for a backdoor, a legitimate one, is that the users are stupid and will break your little machine, and you have to sneak in there and do magic to fix it. And if they've deleted the administrative client, or they've deleted some sort of a function that has to be there, if you don't have a backdoor, it is broken. You cannot fix it. So programmers, because we're all gods, we go in there and we go, oh, I see what you did. Sneak in the back door, put it all back together, sneak back out and go, there, I fixed it for you. What'd you do? You'll never understand. Which might be true, but in reality, we have the key to the back door. Do you think China is not bright enough to put back doors on its chipsets? Really?
That's really depressing.
The military just announced that they have had their computers hacked by chipset intrusions. Why do you think they wouldn't affect elections? 2016, were the Russians hacking? Yes, they're always hacking. People understand that. Every country's hacking. We hack, they hack, China hacks. It's what you do, right? If you can get into somebody's election system, Iraq, and change things, then you will do so. Because it's easier to put your thumb on the scale than to have to go to war with somebody if you can just get yourself a friendly in there. And it's not like you coordinate that. Everybody hear of the Mueller investigation? Yeah. Because for some reason, people thought that Trump and Putin sat down and decided and made a deal on how to make this happen. Right? The odds in that are slim to none. You know? Nobody's going to tell you that. But that doesn't mean that the Russians didn't put their thumb on things. And the Chinese, and the British, and the Australians, and probably us too. But the last guy in wins. And that's the problem. So in 2016, Hillary looked like she had a pretty good lead. She was going to win, right? Everybody's about ready to go home. Suddenly everything changed. Was it a hack? Was it correction? You will never know. Because the system is so faulty that you will never know if any election is valid or it's not. And that's why there's no trust. So what can you do? You got to do something, right? Got to get rid of the machines. Got to get rid of the machines. In Germany, in 2004, I worked with them to get rid of their machines. They have a constitutional case, Supreme Court case, German Supreme Court, that actually does not allow machines to be used in elections because the voter cannot understand the counting process or see it in a machine. And you can't, right? So even if you want to believe, you just have to have faith because you can't see it. And anybody can come in and hack it, right? The Netherlands, 2018, was it 18? Yeah, 2018, called me up. Russians had broken into their machines. They got into their poll books and they got into their voting system. And they were freaking out because their election was 6 months off. So they called me up and said, how do we stop these things? And I said, well, you take them. You put them in a box that fits really tight. And then you throw them in the ocean because you aren't keeping them out. You just aren't keeping them out. And I said, and you caught the Russians, but you probably didn't catch the 27 other countries that are in there poking around too. The Russians were particularly bad for a couple of years, but they've gotten better. So don't feel too bad for them. They'll get there. So they did just that. I was being a smart aleck because I'm a little that way, but you may have noticed. But they did that. They actually got rid of their machines with 6 months before the election, hand counted the entire country one night, and got it done. Must have taken forever, right? Huh?
How many votes are you talking to the Netherlands?
Netherlands, I think it's 42 million, something like that. A few. A few. Germany. Germany counts its election by hand, has for the last 15 years. Okay? Germany elections, the total number of votes in Germany is approximately the same as California. Berlin has the same number of votes as LA, and they count them by hand, and have for 10 years, and do it in one night. And it's not that hard, guys. We've been told that it takes too long, we're way too stupid and lazy, and it's going to cost too much. It does not have to have any of those problems. The problem we have now is trust, because most of them do not use cameras, because they develop trust fairly quickly, so they just use it with poll observers and things like that. But that's not going to be good enough for us anymore, because Republicans don't trust Democrats, and Democrats don't trust you guys.
Independents don't trust either one of us.
What's that?
And independents don't trust either one.
And independents don't trust either one of us. And they're probably the smart ones. Because at all levels, people will cheat. When I first started telling them about the Republicans' request to have this election so they could fix it, I was talking to the CCC. You would think their response would be, that's terrible, that's horrible, they're destroying democracy. The response was, why didn't we think of it first? That's the response. Why didn't we think of that? Crap, that's so easy, you know. But if they didn't have it then, doesn't mean they don't have it now. You know how those weapons work. They kind of move around. So once they realize that, you got to deal with it. But we can do this. The system we were showing up there, they're done already.
They've been doing it.
Yeah, count something for me back there. The system we're showing actually allows you to count your election that took you 3 weeks to count in about an hour, maybe 2. And you're done. And you can do it every time, and you do it with people, and you can see every vote. So the person at home will see every vote and see it being counted. See the little thing go up? And that is all there is to it. It's real simple, and it's easy to do, but not legal yet. But that's okay, because after today, because we already finished that, they were supposed to be still counting for a little while, but it got done too quick. You know, it's hard at first. It's hard at first. It's kind of slow at first because you have to figure out what your numbers are. But I'll have Beth come up and talk to you and show you that. But you have to figure out what your numbers all are. But after that, once you get the flow, it's like doom, 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 2 minutes to go through a loop. And so the first page had 69 loops, the second page had 62, and the last page had 29. So when you got 29 and you're doing 30 ballots, you're done in half an hour. Just zipping right through them. You do it at the precinct level. Another thing you have to do to make this work right is we have to have control of the actual ballots, because ballots can be bad. So if you send every 5,000 ballots out to everybody in the world and you don't check what's coming in, Arizona, then you have a problem. You know, if the signature comes in and has a smiley face and a heart, and you think that's fine, you're going to have a problem, right? All they have to do is check it, and if they come in early enough, and most of them do, you cure them. Everybody know what that means? It means you call them on the phone and say, do you really sign your name with a smiley face and a heart? And if they say yes, you go, well, you need to come in here and update your signature because this says John Smith. I can read this, and smiley face and a heart is kind of a new twist. But they don't do that. In Arizona, they were actually approving signatures at the rate of 100 every minute. That's good. Think how efficient that is. So they are less than a second per signature verification. And so if you've seen any of the stuff from Kerry Lake, you will notice that there are a lot of them with squiggly lines, a little dot, a heart. And the weird thing is there's a lot of them that have a signature with a heart over the I in 50 or 60 ballots. Now, I don't know. How many people here are signed with a heart over their I? 1? We have 1, but we don't have 50. So the odds of that happening is really pretty slim. They don't verify them. But a way to do that is once you get in those mail-in ballots, you take those mail-in ballots and you don't open them at Central, because Central can do whatever they want with them. In 2008, Broward County, we had a whistleblower come forward. They had a little room where they would go back there and they would fill out the ballots. Independent of actually seeing a ballot, they were filling them out. When a mail-in ballot came in, they would throw out the mail-in ballot and put in one of their own, which is very efficient. Think how fast that is. You don't have to worry if you got the right selection, you don't have to check anything, you're good to go. But it's not really fair, is it? So that's where we are. If you get those ballots, you take them, you count them in the precinct, because you can count them really fast. And you don't need a machine, and you don't need to spend a lot of money. And in most of these countries that do this, that do the hand count, because you'll get people that give you outlandish figures, you know. Oh, that will cost $27 billion to count this election. You ever hear that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, how much you paying? Oh, I'm paying $100 an hour. I think they deserve it. Okay, well, that's nice, but you don't have to pay that way. And the countries that actually do hand counts don't do it that way. They use the system like you use for a jury. You basically get a civic summons that says, you're counting an election, congratulations. And when you do, you don't have to serve on a jury, so people actually sign up. Because if you've ever served on a jury, you know you want to count an election for an hour, right? That's how Germany does it. That's how the Netherlands does it. That's how France does it. They just draft them. Now, in California, I looked it up. See? I know where I am. In California, I looked it up. You know how much you pay for jury duty? $9 a day. Don't spend it all in one place. And parking. Okay. So you get $9 a day. You bring in your volunteers, as many as you need. Draftee volunteers. They still call them volunteers. I'm not sure why. But your draftee volunteers, they count your election, as many as you need. And in my opinion, you bring in extra because you want to get it quick and painless and knock it out in an hour, and then everybody can go home and party. Because who wants to sit there and count election ballots for 4 hours? I don't. And that's all you got to do, and it's done. Same way with your early vote. Take your early vote. Don't count it central where it loses all sort of connection to reality. Bring it, package it up, drop it off at the precinct. You now have precinct numbers. You now have ballots that match people, and you now have numbers that match throughout. So you can actually count this thing on camera, and you know what the results are. There's a lot of people talking about electronic poll books. Have you heard any of these presentations talking about electronic poll books? Electronic poll books are bad, but they're mostly bad because they connect to the same system that the computer connects to. Which means if I know how many votes I need, and I'm the computer, I know how many votes I need, I can look over the poll book and see where I can get them. Because I know who's going to vote, I know when they're going to vote, and I know if they voted already. Sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes people will come in and try and vote and say, you voted already. They go, I didn't vote already. No, it says you did in the poll book. So they don't get to vote because something, not someone, but something has voted for them already. But if you separate that out where there has to be a real piece of hand-marked paper, it makes it much harder for these to cheat you. It's even harder because they don't know what votes they need because everything is counted on election night. It's not counted early, no information leaks out because there's no way to leak it out, and everything is counted that night. So if you have 1,500 precincts in the ballot, you count those 1,500 ballots. You had quite a few races. That was a primary election they were doing back there that they knocked out. And how long did it take? Hour 20? Something like that? How long did it take? Who's the slowest counter?
The people who went to the bathroom.
Less than an hour 20.
Who was our slowest counter?
Probably hour and 10, maybe hour and 5. The time got off when we stood up, stopped counting, and did the pledge, and listened to the song and clapped for the veterans. So our time was not exactly precise, but a little over an hour.
Okay, we'll give them another stack.
Yeah, we have another stack. We got another stack right here.
Find another stack. Maybe count one over. Anyway, you'll have to show them in a second here. So that's all you have to do to make the system work. Once we're done here, since we now have a documentary that's going to prove the count and prove the speed and prove all that, I will go and talk to Gavin Newsom and to the Secretary of State and see if we can't push this through. Technically, it is a calculator, which is already approved by state law and already approved by federal law. It is nothing more than a calculator. In fact, it's not even a calculator. It is adds and subtracts and nothing else. Because you really don't want a lot of multiplication in your calculator that's counting your election. Yes, ma'am.
I have a very good question. Why are you not on mainstream media or some type of show to show the entire country all this fantastic information?
Well, they don't care. If you have noticed, Did you notice the video of me testifying before Congress and the great sound there? Did you notice the video is a little grainy and a little home shot? Mainstream media was at this particular hearing. They were recording the whole thing. When I got up to testify, every one of them, ABC, NBC, all of them, dropped their cameras and left the room. So if you think you're going to get anything out of mainstream media, I think you're barking the wrong tree. I think they already know the game. I mean, it's hard to believe that corporate media would want corporate-controlled elections, but let's just say maybe they do, because that seems to be their leaning. And even when they were complaining about it in 2004, 2006, 2008, 2012, 2016, not 2020, because 2020 was the best election on earth. What changed between 2016 and 2020? Nothing. Nothing. They didn't really do anything. So, if I can bring up Holly, she is doing these presentations in Georgia. Holly, you coming? Uh-oh, I think I woke her up. I want to tell her what she's doing, then I'll bring up Beth, and she'll do her thing, and then we'll ask questions.
Why did they let Trump win in 16?
Why what?
Why did they let Trump win in 16?
Because I don't think they calculated it properly. I think you crazy Republicans just outvoted them that time. Don't expect it to happen again.
We outvoted them.
I think they didn't, you're right, they didn't calculate
Well,
enough votes.
you got them in 2016, you will never get them again. Every time you catch them, they move the ball. There used to be logs in the die bowl machines, and people used to catch them. The numbers were always off in all the die bowl machines. How'd they fix the problem?
Get rid of logs.
Got rid of logs. Yeah. There used to be exit polling, right? We still use exit polling in other countries to make sure that their elections are valid. After 2000, election polling did not match. What did we have to do? How do we fix that? Got rid of exit polling. So, it's a fixed game. Go ahead. It's all yours.
Hi, my name is Holly Kessler. I am from Georgia, Savannah, Georgia, so born and raised there. Shasta County, wow, this is great. This is huge. So excited to be here. I want y'all to give Clint another round of applause. He got us into this mess. So thank you, Clint. I always say that. I try to joke around a little bit, but yeah, thank you for getting us into this mess, and thank you for coming up with a solution to get us out of this mess. Anyway, so Clint was with us back in Spalding County, Georgia, a few months ago. Beth, Clint, and Jody came down and supported us. Spalding County was our first county in Georgia to go back to mandating hand counting. Now we still have Dominion, that's statewide. It's a complete disaster. Well, all of Georgia's a complete disaster right now. But we do have Dominion, and that is something we are, pushing hard to get rid of, just like every other, state in the country is trying to get rid of the machines, because they absolutely have to go, and I'm going to tell you all some
I can tell you how to get rid of those machines.
Well, I can too. I have a couple ideas, but trying to go the legal and lawful way first. So Spalding County stepped up, and since then we have actually trained 57 counties across our state. Now we have 159 counties, so we still have a long ways to go, but 57, that's a lot of counties. We've hit the ground running, and we're working with, our GOPs and our county elected officials. We brought in some people, Seth Cashel and I are great friends, and he's come in town. We did a tour across the state and met with a lot of officials privately, where they could, look at his information in coordination with our information, and it's just a mess. A lot of times I like to tell people stories, because stories really resonate. And if there's anybody in here that's questioning what's going on, Spalding County, let me stop right there. Let me back up a little bit. I also was Candace Taylor's campaign manager. Candace Taylor was our grassroots candidate, absolutely fabulous. Was her campaign manager, still senior advisor to her. They completely gutted her votes, and it was awful to watch. It was really gut-wrenching to watch. They gave her 41,000 votes. We had 68,000 volunteers, boots on the ground. Not even our entire database. That was just statewide volunteers that we knew we had boots on the ground. So yeah, they really jabbed it in, stuck it in good there. Spalding County, they still have an active investigation open with them, with the Secretary of State's office, where our ballot marking devices, I'm not sure how y'all do yours here, but we go in, we get a little card, we insert it into the BMD, the ballot marking device, and it pops up our ballot, and we make our selections. You know, it's a little touch screen, it prints out on a little printer. Well, this particular case, it prints out a ballot on what appeared to be a sheet of notebook paper. It was regular, same security paper that was in there, but a setting had been changed to where it printed all these lines on the paper. Have no idea how it did it. The state said it couldn't do it, but it did do it. So they were wanting to shut down the investigation and dismiss it, and Spalding County said, no, we want to know. So they started talking to other counties. There is, in fact, a setting somehow, or if you press too much of something, it'll automatically flip. Well, the rest of that story is when the ballot got scanned in, it threw the votes off by 4. Which caused a hand recount, which is how they found the notebook paper ballot that, you know, sparked the investigation. So that's one instance. Another instance I heard him say, and he said he doesn't know if it's true. It's very true. Michelle Long Spears, a Democrat out of DeKalb County, her and her husband both voted in their precinct. She was running for commissioner. She was in 3rd place. She went to go look at the numbers, and which every single candidate should do. Check the data, check the numbers. You know what you did, what your ground game was. And so she did, and found out that her and her husband, she had 0 votes in her precinct, which was the precinct she lived in, her precinct. And so her and her husband's votes didn't even show up. So she went and demanded a hand recount. While she was in 3rd place, she ended up coming out in 1st place. That was like 3,500 votes that the machines threw off. That was huge. There was another one in Screven County that happened in. The judge actually ordered, Screven is down close to Savannah, right next door to me. And the judge actually ordered, he said, we're not even recounting. He said, we're just having a whole new election. So there's circumstances. Everybody hears about Fulton, which Fulton's a total disaster, I agree. But it's happening all over the state. There's 159 counties, and I can tell you 159 plus stories. It is happening everywhere. So if you're on the fence about anything that's going on, get off the fence. Get on board. This is nonpartisan. We need everybody on board, and we've got to get rid of those machines, and we've got to get our country back. And I think that's it.
Next, I'm going to have you listen to Beth Beasel. She's with Texas First. They've been going all around the state of Texas to every county to demonstrate and to show this stuff. Yeah, I know you're dragging me along too, but it's your trip.
Go ahead. Does this work? Yeah. Does it work? Yeah. Okay, y'all. The most exciting thing I want to say tonight is go Shasta County. Patrick, I'm just floored. I'm Beth Beasel. Okay, Dallas County, Texas. I love Texas. I love Dallas County. But I don't think I could get a crowd like this on a Thursday night in Dallas County, just saying. So y'all, thank you so much. Thank you for the volunteers, so please give yourself a round of applause. Okay, I'm just going to say a few things about Texas, and then I want to talk about what's happening up here. In Texas, the director of the election division under the Secretary of State for Texas said to our election administrators who were complaining about our hand count tour around the state of Texas. The election administrators were complaining, it's a circus, they're lying, they're selling snake oil. And then they said, Clint Curtis is going to make $1 million off of this. I don't know how you go from snake oil to making $1 million, but anyway, that's what they were saying. They did not want us coming to their counties. We've been to a lot of counties in Texas. We have 254 counties, so we'll have a lot more to go. But the election director, or the director of the elections division said to these election administrators, I think you guys call it ROV, maybe, something like that. Okay. We call it election administrator. She said, it's not going away, it's a movement. It's not going away, it's a movement. And this is true all over and please, let's have some applause, because this needs to be a movement in California, and it's going to start right here in Shasta County, right? And Clint and I were up and Holly and Jody were up in Missouri, what was it, 2 weeks ago, and we talked to a lot of people from a lot of states. And it's going to be a movement there. This isn't going away, y'all. But I want y'all to be the first county to actually do it. So what's the it? What is the it? The it is this right here. And some of y'all probably been watching. Sorry, I missed my cue, by the way. We were changing the guard when he said, Beth, count something. I don't know how you timed that just right. But anyway, so the coolest thing, I've got some notes here, and I'm going to tell you some cool things about it. But the coolest thing I'm going to tell you right now is, Tristan, will you put your face into the camera, please? Okay, can do it. Can you see? He is 11 years old, and he is a perfect counter, y'all. This is Tristan. And his sister is 13, Callie. Callie, I don't know if you'll be able to get, are you standing back there? Wave. There's Callie, she's 13. She was also counting. So, the record holder before Shasta County was a 14-year-old up in Montana. You guys are beating every marker, okay? You got an 11-year-old counting your ballots. That's how easy it is. That's how transparent it is. So, thank you, Tristan. Thank you, Callie. Y'all keep counting. I'm just going to tell you a few things about why this is what I think, and I'm not the only one, why I think this is the way, the most trustworthy way to hand count ballots. I've looked at a lot. And maybe because this might be on live TV or whatever, live stream, I'm not going to name names or name states or name people in my own state. There are a lot of ways to count ballots. Some of them are very clever. Some of them are not so clever. Okay, I won't go into those details, but I want to tell you what makes this system of counting or method of counting the best and the most trustworthy. And the word trust, that is the big rock. That is the criteria by which you should decide what way you're going to count your ballots. It's got to be trusted by everybody. And I think you covered that. I was in the back of the room, but you covered that, right? Mm-hmm. It's got to be trusted by the Democrats, the Republicans, the Peace and Freedom Party, the None Party, that's on your ballot. Don't know really what that is. It's got to be trusted by everybody. And also, the way you hand count ballots, it's got to be lawsuit proof, because you will get sued. I know your Secretary of State's has already given you, what, 32 pages more of what you have to do, tie your hand behind your back and use your alternate hand, whatever. So the people don't want you to do this. They're going to make it very hard. So you don't want to pick a solution or a method of counting ballots that is accessible to everybody, visible, transparent to everybody. It's accurate. You got to have one that's accurate, a way to get to accuracy. But you got to make sure that it's going to be lawsuit proof, and I think this one is. So why is this method of hand counting, the one that is going to bring back the most amount of trust to everybody? The reason is because of what you're looking at right here, the camera. There are two cameras. There's a camera over the ballot. There's a camera over the station. The station includes two calculators. Now, Clint already told you what a calculator is. That's the little push button tally counter thing. There are two stations, two calculators, two people in a station. So there's one camera that's over the whole station so you can see what buttons are being pushed. And then there's a camera to see the ballot very clearly on the far right-hand side of that screen. You can see anything. I should say you can see everything, anytime, anywhere.
Uh-oh.
So, start over sheet. So if you make a mistake, Uh-oh. Thank you for the good demo. If you make a mistake, then you have to recount. We've got batches of 50, so they're going to have to recount that batch. I'm not going to go into it right now about how they knew they made a mistake, but that's fairly clever too, thanks to Clint. But the key here is transparency and verifiability. So the candidate who lost by 142 votes, Patrick, let's say you lost by 142 votes. Would you like to recount your race to make sure that it didn't get stolen?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Do you think that you could use this video here with your team, your campaign team members, your family members? Could you use that? Is it clear enough? Use that and recount your own race.
Absolutely.
That's the key. That's the key. And you know how expensive election contests are and recounts are. And recounts aren't even that reliable, because by the time you file to do a recount and then you actually get people in there to do the recount, you've lost your chain of custody of your ballots. It's been a long time. There are too many question marks, right? So this is real time, and you could live stream the counting process. And by the way, I forgot to say, I'm sorry for the people in the back who were bothered by the noise, but when you hand count ballots, you actually do have to call out the names of the candidates out loud so that your partner can hear. So I apologize, but it is a little bit noisy back there. But you want to be able to count the day of, at the close of Election Day. You want to count your Election Day ballots that are in person. You want to count your in-person early vote ballots. I'm not sure exactly how you do it here in California. Somebody explained it to me this morning. I forgot already. But your early vote in person, you want to deliver those ballots to your precinct on Election Day. Double locks, double seals, chain of custody, strong chain of custody, so that they're also counted with your Election Day ballots in the precinct. Did I say in the precinct? Your mail ballots, and I think in California you have a lot of mail ballots, right? All right, probably too many. You want to do your signature verification, which is a joke, by the way, pretty much. Did you talk about the smiley faces in Arizona? Okay, it's a joke. But that, look, you play the hand you're dealt, right? That's the hand we got right now. So you take those mail ballots, you sort them by precinct, and you deliver those out to the precinct under lock and key, double seals, and chain of custody paperwork. So all of your ballots are sorted and delivered into your precinct. And let me tell you what that does. When you decentralize your counting process, and you're already voting in your precinct on Election Day, I hope, I hope you'll get there. You decentralize your counting process and therefore minimize your attack surface. Because it's really hard, it's a lot harder to manipulate a lot of different precincts all at one time. It takes a lot more effort to coordinate all these precincts. But the other cool thing is, this camera doesn't show it, but how many stations did we have back there? I've already sort of lost count. 15 stations maybe? 30 people, 15 stations? You've got cameras over these ballots. You might think, well, somebody can hack that video. Well, it can be done, but each camera, you'd have to hack 60 frames per second times 2, because you have 2 cameras, and that's just on one station. So if we're counting in a particular precinct that has 15 stations, if you start doing the math, it gets very hard to manipulate a video feed. But there's something else. If your video feed number, or if you've manipulated the video feed, and Patrick is recounting his race, and he's looking at it, and he's looking at a manipulated...
I get to count my own race?
You get to count your own race.
I only thought the ROV got to do that, but hey, I like the sound of that.
Okay, but let's say you do count your own race, but the number that, when you're looking at the video, the number doesn't match what was on the paper. And by the way, I didn't say this, but do you know what election night reporting consists of? And I don't know about in California, but in in Texas, our election night reporting, the numbers that are reported by the Secretary of State don't always match what the counties report. So election night reporting with this hand count system that Clint Curtis invented is you take your tally sheet, the total numbers from your stations, you add them all up for the whole precinct, and you just slap it right on the front door of your precinct. That's election night reporting on paper. And then if you want to get really fancy to give those numbers, totals to the county, you use a telephone, okay? You just call it in. Now, eventually your county judge will take, or election judge will take the ballots into the county with those tally sheets. But Patrick, you would look at that physical paper to see what the physical paper says, what numbers, and that's real time. You can't manipulate that physical paper, and if it doesn't match what's on the video feed, then we'd have to redo the election. So there's all kinds of ways to reconcile or checks, I should say checks and balances. There's many ways to have checks and balances. There's another way, and I'll just say this really quick. At any given station, I don't know if you can see this because it's kind of small, but you've got 2 LED screens here, so 2 numbers there and 2 numbers there, that one and that one up there. So 4 numbers. Let's say you have 50 ballots in your batch, and that's what we had, 50 ballots in your batch. At the end of a counting run, and a counting run is 2 pairs, and I promise you I'm not going to go more into the weeds than this, but a counting run is 2 pairs of candidates. When you go through all 50 ballots, you add up all 4 numbers, and it should equal 50. If it equals more than 50, then you press the button too many times, or I don't know what. If you have less than 50, like 48, 47, that means maybe you grab too many ballots at a time, you counted too few. That's a great way to reconcile every pair of candidates. And then on your tally sheet, when you put all your numbers for all your candidate totals and your undervotes and overvotes, and we count those. Undervotes means no selection in a race. Overvotes means too many selections in a race. You add those numbers up at the end of that race, and guess what that total should be? 50. So 2 ways to reconcile. This method is the most transparent, verifiable, accessible, and I'm going to say inexpensive way to count your ballots. Anyone, anytime, anywhere can see it. Don't you want to see your ballots? Don't you want access to your ballots? Well, there it is. I could say more, but I won't.
But it may not be legal yet. So I'm going to go and I'll talk to Gavin Newsom. I talked to him in 2010. I actually was running for U.S. Congress in District 4, Democratic Party. So we talked a lot about this very issue, and he was on board. So we'll see if he still is, right? And we'll talk to them, but we can now call them out. You know, your initial audit that you put in 20 years ago, 2004, I worked with Deborah Bowen on it to actually make it happen. So I do know these people, and it'll be a little harder for them to not accept it since no one can cheat anyone. I mean, why would they not want to do it? Now, if you can't do it, if they don't let you, these guys have put their neck on the line out here to make this happen. They may end up with a terrible way to do it, because the state will give you a horrible way to do it. You're going to have to suck it up, get it done until we can get the one we want. But get up there, volunteer, make sure it's successful, even if it's painful. In Texas, there's something called Chapter 65. It will take 16 times the people and 8 times longer than this method. But they may have to do it. And you may have to do it, along with your 37 other pages they're going to give you. You know, you'll have to wear a certain hat, and, you know, you'll have to wear a clown suit. Yeah, something. There'll be something strange in there. You know, Nye County, when they did theirs, they actually used what was on the books, right? Nevada had a hand count procedure, so they used what was on the books, and they were going to do it. They called me up and said, well, we have to have the number of volunteers. Can't get approval until we have the right number of volunteers. So I called around. We got 450 volunteers for this little Nye County. It's a little county. It has like, I don't know, 7 people in it. So it's a little county. You know, the biggest town was like 20,000 people. So if we get all the people there, we will double the size of the town. Secretary of State, of course, changes the mind because they don't want them to do it, right? So now they give them another procedure. Well, you can't use anyone who doesn't live in the county to count your elections unless it's the machine company, because none of those live in the county. So they're welcome, right? Because they're perfect. But you can't use any volunteers to do it. That's from out of the county. So we worked on that and we got those. And they sent them 20 pages of additional twists and turns to keep them from having a successful way of doing it. They were going to make them wear special gloves.
They've got that for us too.
What was that?
The Secretary of State, right now they're trying to pass AB 969, and one of those things is we have to wear special gloves, spaced 10 feet apart, have to have 4 people at each, and they estimate that we're needing 1,500 volunteers to count 60,000 ballots. But they don't think we can do it in a month.
Well, the way they're doing it, they may eventually succeed. Because right now they only want 4, but they may want 30 later. You know, you need 30 people, and they have to stand in a human pyramid while doing it. You know, because the trick is to force you to use the machines and to control your elections. They control your elections, you don't. You get to shut up and sit down. Now, it's the same thing Russia has, except they accept it. You know? Are we going to accept it?
No.
No. And that's the key. If we let them get away with it, which we have for 20 years, guys, because you guys were slow, then we are stuck with the same exact system that Russia has. The Russians go in and they vote, and then people tell them who won. They don't even bother to pretend to write it down. They just tell them who won. And that's essentially what we have, and that's where we're at. We're actually getting a little deeper in the weeds because now we're doing what Nazi Germany did in 1933 for the Jews and for the Gypsies. They basically are trying to take away the ability to have lawyers that will help you. So now lawyers are being attacked. If you've noticed, they're getting sanctions. You know, I mean, there's been tons of sanctions. People are trying to get this part. I filed a 500-page document in 2016. What sanction did I get? Nothing. Nothing. Now, they charge them $50 a page or something. Or they try and get rid of them. So that's the problem. So you got to... These guys, you really have to give them a lot of credit because they put their neck out there to make this happen. So you got to support them. You got to help them. You know, hopefully the Democrats will look at this now and know that this is not a way to cheat them. This is a way to get what actually they've been looking for 20 years. And actually get behind these guys as opposed to try and pick at them.
Let's give Clint and his team a big round of applause. You know, I really wanted Clint to come out, and he's been here in Shasta County before, so we had a glimpse of what Clint was capable of and what he knows. And this is a series of town halls that I'm doing, and we're going to continue this. We're not going to stop until we hand count every ballot in Shasta County. So I appreciate everybody being out here tonight. If you want to stick around and talk to Clint and any member of his team, please do.